Welcome, everyone. I'm Candace Craw-Goldman, and I'm the founder of Beyond Quantum Healing and quantumhealers.com. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most common questions quantum healing sessions contain. How do you tell if what's coming through is just your everyday conscious mind or something deeper, wiser, and more profound? This is a question Dolores Cannon herself addressed countless times in her decades of work with QHHT. And it's something I see in my own practice and in conversations with practitioners all over the world. How can you tell? Could Dolores tell? Can any trained QHHT or beyond quantum healer tell? Can the client tell? Before I go on to answer that question, if this topic and discussion intrigue you, would you consider liking this video, subscribing to our channel? It would definitely help everyone. All of our healers, all of them could be found by people just like you who are looking for a practitioner or maybe classes or simply looking for support and friendship of a community of other energy, healing, and alternative practitioners. Okay, so let's get to it. So how easy is it to tell what part of one's consciousness is speaking? Is it obvious? Well, let's start with what Dolores' teachings, because that's where I began all the way back to 2008. And this is also where many quantum healers begin. Dolores taught in a very matter-of-fact and straightforward way. She would demonstrate to us how she would simply ask permission to speak to the SC or the subconscious when the client was laying quietly in trance. The client generally would agree to this permission and the conversation would begin with the subconscious speaking through and with the client's voice. Now, Dolores made a very clear distinction between the conscious mind and the subconscious, or the SC, or the higher self. And after asking permission, she would simply carry on as if the conscious mind had already stepped aside, and she was absolutely speaking with that greater aspect of the client. Each and every session I observed her conduct, and that was many over the 6.5 years I worked with her, she did this the same way. Sometimes, however, it became quite obvious that the conscious mind would return or even interfere. The client would answer maybe this way, "I don't know." And Dolores would say something like, "I don't want to talk to Mary right now. I want to talk to Mary's subconscious. Mary's subconscious knows everything about Mary." Dolores Cannon was persistent, confident, and unflappable. God, I miss her. And most of this time, this persistence paid off, even with a client she would describe as resistant. Now, I've observed thousands of quantum healing sessions since my 2008 session conducted by me, my colleagues, my students, and a great many where I have been the client myself. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that consciousness doesn't always behave like a simple on-off switch, where you speak with the conscious mind in one moment and the next your higher self. Can it work that way? Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely it can. I've seen it. And it all depends on the client. Dolores often referred to the conscious mind as a little chatterbox, the part that likes to question, judge, or even interfere in the middle of a session. I tend to call it the analyzer. So she encouraged practitioners to recognize its voice, because once you did, it became obvious when something greater was speaking. She emphasized that the subconscious, SC or higher self, is this vast storehouse of knowledge and healing ability. In her model, the conscious mind steps aside, the SC comes forward to speak with clarity and wisdom. It's very simple. And this framework has been incredibly helpful to countless practitioners and clients. It was really groundbreaking when Dolores began teaching it all those years ago. But here's where I'd like to add something from my own experience. When one deals with human consciousness, there can be a lot of nuance. I don't always find consciousness to be as rigidly compartmentalized as this is the conscious mind and this is the higher self. Instead of acting like a light switch where one turns this part off and this part turns on, I find it often, again, not always, but often, it behaves more like a dimmer switch. There could be a blending, kind of a sliding scale, and an ebb and flow between levels of awareness, even in a session. Consciousness is fluid. It's not always a matter of this part or that part taking control and speaking. Sometimes you hear a hint of the everyday mind coloring the experience. Beliefs, that kind of thing, slide in too. And then a moment later, the wisdom of the higher self shines through more brightly. And in many sessions, they kind of weave together, sometimes like voices in harmony. Now, another important piece of this, many clients come in with the expectation that the higher self, the subconscious, or SC, will sound utterly different from them, as if a completely alien personality will suddenly take over their voice. And sometimes that does happen. The tone, the cadence, the vocabulary, even that can shift dramatically, and the difference is just obvious. But that too, it's not always the case, especially if a client has been listening to and following their own inner wisdom for years. The higher self or the SC can sound very much like them or their everyday self. The reason? Well, they've already been integrating that higher guidance into their daily life. Some of us are, right? The greater voice isn't foreign to them. It's familiar, like a wise old friend. So when clients expect something otherworldly and instead it feels like their own wise self speaking, sometimes that analyzing part of their self comes in and dismisses it, thinking it must not be real. But in truth, it is the higher self, or it can be. It's just already closer to the surface of their daily awareness. And there are more and more humans like this now on the planet than when all of this kind of exploration began. And this is one of the reasons I designed Beyond Quantum Healing, or BQH, to be flexible. In BQH, we don't insist on a rigid divide between the conscious mind and the higher self, or SC. We recognize that the everyday mind can sometimes be a part of the process, weaving itself in and out, and that's okay. It can question, observe, or even sometimes provide its own singular perspective. Often the very act of questioning is what makes the arrival of the greater wisdom so obvious. It's like adjusting that dimmer switch. You can notice the difference between a dim glow and a bright illumination. Sometimes it goes slow and sometimes it goes very quickly. So this flexibility, it's actually liberating both for practitioners and clients. It allows us to appreciate all levels of consciousness as valuable and integral to the human experience. At quantumhealers.com, our worldwide community of practitioners share countless stories that echo this point. One practitioner may describe a client whose higher self spoke in a voice so commanding and different it gave them chills. Another may describe a client whose wisdom came through softly in words that sounded almost exactly like their own, but maybe it carried a clarity or a calmness that unmistakably belonged to something greater. The important thing is not how it sounds, but the quality of what is being shared. Does it surprise the client? Does it bring comfort, healing, or perspective they didn't have before? Does it feel timeless? These are just some of the signs we watch for. And sometimes the client needs a gradual embodiment of that voice. Remember that. A gradual embodiment. So just be persistent like Dolores. Sometimes the expectations of an instant switch between conscious mind and higher self, or SC, feels too abrupt. Okay, to summarize, here are some practical signs that you're accessing something more profound. Number one, a shift in tone or cadence. The voice slows, deepens, become more measured, or, a feeling of it just shifts. Number two, unexpected wisdom. Insights can sometimes appear that the client had never consciously considered. Or even if they did consider it, were delivered in a fresh way. Number three, the quality, the healing quality of it. The words will feel soothing, as if they carry a vibration of love or healing. Number four, emotional resonance. There may be tears, chills, or awe that often accompany these moments. And you as a practitioner can feel this sometimes in your own body. Fluid blending. Number five, sometimes the conscious mind and higher self weave together like that dimmer switch. Just remember that dance. So the SC, or the higher self, it's never harsh, condescending, or judgmental, but can and does gently admonish or deliver blunt truths. It just does, okay? I've seen it. Sometimes it can be surprising. So is it always easy to tell the difference between your conscious mind and something greater? Nope. Not always. Sometimes it's obvious. Other times it's subtle, blended, or familiar. And sometimes the conscious mind butts in. Consciousness is fluid, and learning to recognize its many shapes and parts is part of the art of this work, and why persistence pays off. Always remember Dolores and her persistence. She may be one of the most persistent practitioners I've ever met or known. That was part of her beauty. With each client and with each practitioner who continues to serve others in this way of persistence and going for the truth and the healing and the wisdom that you're looking for. Dolores Cannon, for me anyway, laid this foundation. And QHHT practitioners continue her legacy. And through BQH, we've expanded the field with flexibility and a supportive community at quantumhealers.com. So give us a follow or a thumbs up if you would. And if you're a service to others practitioner, I invite you to connect with our supportive, guru-free community at quantumhealers.com, where we explore past life regressions, consciousness exploration, and quantum healing of all kinds. All right. Until next time, thanks so much for being